The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. At that time, King Herod heard of Jesus, for his name had become known. Some said, "John the Baptist has been raised from the dead. That is why these powers are at work in him." But others said, "It is Elijah." And others said, "It is a prophet, like one of the prophets of old." But when Herod heard it, he said, "John, whom I beheaded, has been raised." For Herod had sent and seized John and bound him in prison for the sake of Herodias, his brother Philip's wife, because he had married her. For John said to Herod, "It is not lawful for you to have your brother's wife." And Herodias had a grudge against him and wanted to kill him. But she could not, for Herod feared John, knowing that he was a righteous and holy man, and kept him safe. When he heard him, he was much perplexed, and yet he heard him gladly. But an opportunity came when Herod on his birthday called courtiers and officers and leading men of Galilee. When Herodias' daughter came in and danced, she pleased Herod and his guests. And the king said to the girl, "Ask me for whatever you wish, and I will grant it." And he vowed to her, "Whatever you ask me, I will give you, even half my kingdom." And she went out and said to her mother, "What shall I ask?" And she said, "The head of John the Baptist." And she came in immediately with haste to the king and asked, saying, "I want you to give me at once the head of John the Baptist on a platter." And the king was exceedingly sorry, but because of his oath and his guests, he did not want to break his word to her. And immediately the king sent a soldier of the guard and gave orders to bring his head in. He went and beheaded him in the prison and brought his head on a platter and gave it to the girl. And the girl gave it to her mother. When his disciples heard of it, they came and took his body and laid it in a tomb. The Gospel of the Lord. I think it was St. Augustine who said that if we allow ourselves to do the little things that are acceptable, we will probably find ourselves doing the big things unacceptable. In other words, if we do not train ourselves in the little kindnesses that we do to people and the little acts of justice, then we will find ourselves doing the bigger things which are not allowed. For instance, something connected with the Ten Commandments. A typical one might be if we decide that, well, we don't have to go to church when we know we should. Yes, in COVID we have this opportunity not to go to church for very good reason. But this will not last forever. But we might say, well, we didn't go during COVID and we survived, so that's okay. But then we will find that we are not growing spiritually and our lives will become dry. What about giving ourselves from the little things that we may take advantage of, like social media? What about taking advantage of all the food that we are getting and not using it responsibly? We can eventually find ourselves throwing vast amounts of food away simply because we want a fresh meal and the food we're throwing away is perfectly edible while many people are dying of hunger. we look after the little things, we develop an attitude that helps us when we need to make tougher decisions to make the right decision. Let us look at Herod. He was used to having favors from women. And this probably started from a young age. And so he married his brother's wife. Everybody knew that that was wrong. Not only that, but then he had an eye on her daughter. And we see how the story unfolds, that he gets himself into a situation where he agrees that a man that, as the word said, that he knew was righteous and holy, and he was keeping him safe, and he was happy to hear John when he spoke. All these things did not stop him from saying to the girl, I will not grant you that favor, because he had got used to making excuses for his lust, and his reputation was so important that what he needed to be true was sacrifice. Firstly, Saint Agatha in the 3rd century, in what is now Sicilia near Mount Etna. You remember that name because it often erupts. She was in that area, and she was approached by a man in the village who wanted to marry her, and she had made a vow to God to stay pure. He was enraged, and he eventually sent her to a brothel where unmentionable things happened to her. When she survived that and she was in prison, she was dragged over coals. Her breasts were cut off, and she eventually died. But she died happy. And now when Mount Etna explodes, which still happens from time to time, the people of Catania open the tomb where she is laid. They open the veil as a way of asking for her protection. Apparently, her skin is still intact, and there's a pleasant fragrance when they open that veil. Something great happens when we look after the little details in our lives. So today, as we hear the wise stories, and we see that the little things we do that no one else needs to see train us so that when we have to make big and difficult decisions, our hearts and minds and spirits are in the right place. What St. Augustine said was so true. If we allow ourselves to do the little things that we can, we might find ourselves doing the greater things that are mortal sins. Amen.